Hello, Master Duel Central. How's it going, guys? So, it's time for another tier list. Now, it took me longer than usual to get this one out. The Shizu cards just kind of opened up the format to have so many decks in the top tier and in the higher tiers. In this tier list, tier 1, tier 2, and tier 3 are actually the closest they've ever been, I would say. Especially tier 1 and 2, it's like almost like you can almost put tier 2 and tier 1. It's going to be just little things. I feel like there's certain decks that are absolutely more dominant, but overall, like, it's a super diverse format, which made it really hard to pin down the tiers for this list. So I did write down a list here that I'm going to be looking at. Anyway, guys, make sure to like, comment, let me know your thoughts, and subscribe if you're not already subscribed to the channel. Without further ado, let's get into it. And of course, I personally prefer putting the top tier decks at the start because I find it makes it easier to do the rest of the list, because the rest of the list revolves around what's in the top tier. Without a shadow of a doubt, we've got Sprite in tier 1, whether it's Runic Sprite, even with the Shizu cards in there sometimes, maybe it's the Life Twin variant, maybe the Frog variant. I think we can just like put Sprite in tier 1 in general. It's not necessarily like a free Diamond 1, however, because you do have to be quite skillful at the game. Like, it's easy to play, but setting up like a carrot and a red is not really just going to win you a game on its own. So there's a lot of thinking involved, I would say, with playing this deck. I still think Runic Sprite is the best variant, even with the hits to Runic recently. But either way, I still think this deck is just absolutely amazing. Even if you're playing the other variants, it's just incredible. Definitely a top tier deck. Now, I don't think anyone would argue with me for this one, but maybe people would argue with me for the next one here. I actually think Branded Despia is also top tier right now. I think I underrated Branded Despia on the last tier list. Actually, Branded Despia is still just a very consistent deck, even with Tualuber. It's just so hard to interrupt sometimes. You know, they build so much advantage off of that Chimera play. Of course, there are a lot of weaknesses to this deck right now because of the presence of Ishizu. Like, if you get your shufflers in your grave, Despia has a really hard time playing through your shufflers because you can stop their Branded in red. You can even like get rid of the Albaz, put it back in the deck so that they can't use Lubellion or the Albion. So definitely these cards here do kind of hurt it. The thing about it is Ishizu is not played everywhere right now. It's not like dominating the format, so it's just kind of there. That's why I put it in Looming Presence, because it does have an impact on the meta to an extent, but not so much so that it'll affect the tiers of the deck that much. However, it is definitely a threat against the Despia deck. Now, another deck actually that Shizu is really good against, especially those shufflers, is Runic Stun. The problem is, Runic Stun also loves the Ishizu millers, right? Like, it makes their game plan of milling your deck a lot faster. They can deck you out a lot quicker thanks to the Ishizu cards. And honestly, I think I underrated this deck on the last tier list. Just those stun cards in general give you so much control over the game. Those floodgates are still as good as ever, and they have plenty of them. They have a great draw engine to get into their floodgates. So unfortunately, we're still stuck staring down some Runic Stun this format, and I think DUELIST Cup is going to be all the worst for it. We're probably going to be seeing a lot of these guys in the DUELIST Cup, unfortunately. I really think Konami should do something about this. I'm really at the point where I wouldn't mind if they hit like the Fountain. Even if it hurt one of my favorite decks, which is Sprite Runic, I think it'd be kind of worth it, honestly. This deck is just really getting out of hand and pretty annoying playstyle, I'm not going to lie. Alright, so let's get into some more of the tier list here. Here's a deck that I thought was probably teetering on tier 1, but I don't think it's quite there anymore, and that's Mathmech. Now, again, like I said, like tier 2 is almost tier 1 in this list because there's so many really good decks in this format right now. Like, this is, both these tiers are absolutely going to get you to Diamond 1. That's what I want to say for this list. So these are both Diamond worthy decks. I just think Mathmech, because it loses so hard to the shufflers, I kind of wanted to put it down here. Like, yes, the shufflers hurt Despia and Runic a lot, but like genuinely, I think Mathmech is just like terrible facing shufflers. Shufflers will completely stop the super factorial. They'll stop the Sigma effect. Of course, you can still like OTK going second if you play your cards right, but facing shufflers is just like almost unplayable for them. And while we're putting them here, I think like Ignister is about in the same spot. Ignister Mathmech is a really good variant of the deck, really solid. I just think both of these decks struggle in the face of the shufflers. Of course, Ignister can set up a tower, so if you don't have an out for the tower and you're going second against them, maybe that'll cost you the game. Like I said, these decks are still super amazing. Obviously, Mathmech is ultra consistent. Super Factorial, if it resolves, is a hell of a card. Absolutely incredible. And they have so many plays with the extra deck that they can do. I don't think the Heat Soul stuff is really good. I think if you're doing Heat Soul stuff, that is fake news. You need to stop believing what people tell you and stop passing on Heat Soul Super Factorial. Do better. Pass on IP, please, if you're playing pure Mathmech. Pass on IP Masquerena with a Wicked or something, plus like a Lingaribo. That is so much better. Makes it so much harder to play through and makes the deck a lot better overall. But yeah, I think both of these decks are still absolutely incredible. Just not quite tier 1 in my opinion. Another deck actually that I thought was a lot lower on the list but turned out to really surprise me this format, and I also think is teetering on tier 1, is actually Exosister. Exosister has been getting some really good results lately, and it's just a really solid deck. Honestly, it's kind of goofy because it just does one thing and it does it really well. It can play under D-Shifter, which like anytime you can play under D-Shifter, you're going to get a lot of free wins. But other than that, it's just, dude, the banishing can be hard to play through. I'm not gonna lie. Going second against Exosister, it's really hard to play through all the banishes they do. Not a lot of the decks can really deal with that. Runic Stun is complete ass at playing through those banishes. So is Sprite, to be honest. Like, you get rid of their first normal summon. If they're playing Runic Sprite, they might be able to special Hugin. Then it might be a different deal. It's a really tough deck to go against when you're going second. And with all their extenders, they're actually quite good at going second as well. And they can run a lot of hand traps. Again, Dimension Shifter, one of the best hand traps in the game. They get to run it and win some games for free. So I mean, I don't think I can put these guys any lower. And honestly, like, again, these are decks that are almost teetering on tier 1. Like, absolutely incredible deck right here. Cyber Dragons, good luck. They're not good. They're not good. You got to give up on the Cyber Dragons. I'm going to be honest with you. Also, while talking about bad, Zombie Ishizu is overrated. It's still zombie. It's still bricky. It's fun. It's cool. But it's rogue. It's not much better than rogue, to be honest with you. The Shizu cards can help, but it's also, you're still just like playing a pile of zombies, which means a lot of your hands are going to not do very much. It feels like 70% of your hands lose to a single interruption, which makes it really tough to recommend. Honestly, I just don't think zombies is in a really good place right now. I thought Ishizu would help it a lot, and I was really excited to make a deck on, you know, Ishizu Punk zombies. But the thing about Ishizu Punk is they don't need the zombies. Ishizu Punk with the Adventure engine is a lot better. I actually think Ishizu Punk Adventure is probably like at the bottom of tier 2. This deck is really solid. The one thing is it's a pile and it's a combo deck. So the reason I'm not putting it much higher, even though it's probably one of the most impressive decks on the list and in the current format, is it loses very heavily to Max C, and it's going to open Ash, Called By, and Cross Out way less often because it's a 60 card deck, but still definitely a very impressive deck. Now, next up here, we'll talk about, well, we'll just do this real quick here. We'll put Dark Magicians. I think Dark Magicians kind of cope. I'm going to put it like at the top of good luck. I thought it was better than it is. I mean, obviously you can get some cheap wins. Like, even Cyber Dragons, you can get some cheap wins. Like, I definitely think it's possible to get to top rank with pretty much any deck on this list, as always, but it's just your odds are really low, so, you know, good luck with that. But yeah, Dark Magician, yeah, you can go Rhyme Style on people and activate like Deck Devastation Virus, and maybe make your way up to top tier with that. Like, good for you if you do. But yeah, this is a goofy deck. We're also gonna put Blue Eyes in here. Blue Eyes is definitely better than Cyber Dragon. I think Dark Magician is the best out of these like shitty anime decks, but Blue Eyes is definitely better than Cyber Dragon. Cyber Dragon is just complete ass, honestly. I'm sorry for Cyber Dragon players. Speaking of bricky decks here, we have Predaplants, and wow, I was coping with Predaplants. Now, I don't think it's a bad deck by any means. It's definitely got more gas than regular Despia, but it's also like so much brickier than regular Despia, so I'm not comfortable putting it up here. I think it's like in the mid to low tier 3s at best. Like, it's really not in an amazing place. It's still a really good deck. Like, the boards it sets up are way better than regular Despia, and the gas makes it so it can play through a lot more interruption when it doesn't brick. But it's just, it's quite bricky, I'm not gonna lie. Running into Ishizu decks with this deck is kind of nice because they'll trigger your Biblisp and you'll get to do some free searching on top of triggering your Tragedy in the Grave. So like, you get a lot of value out of other people playing Ishizu cards, but still just the amount of bricks, I can't really put it higher than that. Next up, another deck that I think I overrated on the last tier list maybe, is Floowandereeze. Well, actually, it was really good last format, but right now Floowandereeze is looking mad silly, mad goofy. Still really good. Still really good. Don't get me wrong. If you don't negate Robina and they set up their stuff and they got control over the game, you're done for. Also, they'll get free wins off of Dimension Shifter pretty often. I'm going to put them at top of tier 3. I think Floowandereeze is not like a bad deck by any means. It's definitely not rogue. But it's just, man, it's so fragile. Sometimes just a well-placed imperm, if they don't have their flash spell, they just lose the game right there. The field spell is really good, but it's not really the end of the world anymore. Our decks can do so much at the moment in the game. They do have the advantage against decks like Runic Stun that, you know, if you banish their stuff face up, well, maybe they'll summon a bird and just like bring back the stuff you banished and stuff like that. So it has a good matchup there. But it doesn't have a very good matchup against Branded Despia. It definitely does not have a good matchup against Runic Sprite or just Sprite in general. Sprite just kind of shits on Floowandereeze. Like, I don't know. I just don't think it's in a very good place, honestly, at the moment. Still really good when it gets its control over the board. Okay, let's talk about the fan favorite deck on my channel, which is Dinos. And yeah, I'm going to be real with you guys. Dinos are pretty ass right now. Like, it's really rough. It's just so bricky. Going second, like playing a dedicated going second deck in the game right now, I think is really copium. And so you're kind of stuck like either choosing, okay, I'm going to go second with Dinos and like pray that I draw the right cards to stop my opponent's board, or they're just gonna negate my Misc Engrave and I'm just gonna lose the game. Or you go first and you go like, okay, I'm gonna pray that I draw into Called By so that I can negate Ash when they try to negate my Misc in the grave, otherwise I'm gonna lose the game. And that's if I don't brick, which I often will do with Dinos. They're just not in a great place. They're still a strong deck, of course, and when they pop off, they look like the best deck in the game, but it's just, man, not the most consistent. I genuinely think they're better than Zombie Ishizu though, genuinely. So I think they're in Rogue, not worse than Zombie Ishizu though. Honestly, not even as bricky as Zombie Ishizu. So, you know, we'll give them that, but yeah, I definitely don't think they're even tier 3 at the moment. I don't think they're anything above Rogue right now. Oh, and next up, let's do Rika Sun Avalon. Now, Rika Sun Avalon, or just pretty much just Rika, honestly. I have a Sun Avalon card here, but I haven't really been seeing Sun Avalon as much as just Rika with like a couple of Sun Avalon cards in there. But yeah, Rika is also just kind of almost tier 1 for me. It's definitely just at the top of tier 2 probably. It's really, really solid going first. It sets up incredible boards that are almost impossible to play through, to be honest. 4 combo decks. The thing about this deck that's stopping me from putting it tier 1 is it doesn't really do much against like back row. It doesn't really set up good spell and trap negates in general, so it is kind of susceptible to those decks, which are definitely not unpopular right now. If you're playing Runic Sprite and you've got a lot of like Runic cards in hand, you can probably dismantle their board pretty easily and then get into your Sprite combos. They do have that really solid graveyard interruption with the Rika Princess, which is a really, really scary card, and if they have the field spell plus Rika Princess in the grave, you're gonna have a pretty bad time. So I definitely don't think it's a weak deck by any means. Again, absolutely a Diamond 1 worthy deck, super powerful, just almost tier 1 for me, but I don't think it's quite there. That's why I'm gonna put them at like really high tier 2, like, because they're not like the easiest deck to stop ever. They can play through interruption. Anyway, speaking of a ton of interruption and playing through it, Adamancipators. At first, when I started writing this tier list, I was gonna put Adamancipators at the top of tier 2. But honestly, I think they're like tier 1. Adamancipator Sprite specifically, by the way, like, let's remove Block Dragon. Actually, let's put this new guy just to make it clear what I mean. Because I think like the other Adamancipator lists are probably like top of tier 3, but I think Adamancipator Sprite specifically is absolutely incredible. Honestly, Diamond has been so easy for me since I started playing this deck. It's actually been ridiculously easy. I'm at Diamond 2 right now, 3 games away from getting to Diamond 1. Now, I'm kind of intentionally not getting to Diamond 1 because last season I got Diamond 1 pretty early and it made it really hard to get footage for deck profiles because people would just scoop after like 1 card just to be able to collect some footage more easily. But yeah, I could easily get to Diamond 1 today if I wanted to with Adamancipator Sprite. It's actually insane. Like, I really didn't expect it to be this good, but it can play through like 3 interruptions easily and just fog wall into Sprite combo worst case scenario if they can't get into their Adamancipator plays. It's just too easy because they can just use like a level 2 and another monster to go into Elf, and then with Elf they can like bring back a level 2, go into Gigantic Sprite, and then Gigantic Sprite can start a Sprite combo. So worst case scenario, if they stop all your Adamancipator plays, you can just Fog Wall into full Sprite combo pretty much. It's actually insane. It's absolutely incredible. So yeah, I don't think I can put this deck any lower. It's just been too easy in Diamond Rank. It's actually free games. Another deck that I think is better than I expected it to be is Heroes. Now, Heroes, I think almost every single one of my tier lists have been in Rogue. And like, I don't think they're like tier 2 or anything. But like, Darklaw is like a free win against so many decks right now. Darklaw is such a crazy card in the current format. So I think Darklaw alone and easy access to Darklaw on top of everything else that they can do makes them a lot better than usual. So I'm actually going to put them in tier 3 above Predaplants. I think Heroes are in a pretty good place right now. Now, next up, let's talk about another stun strategy. Now, I have noticed stun become a lot more popular this season in general. And another deck that's stun related and that I think is in a much better place than it was last formats is actually Eldlich. I guess the unlimits and stuff really helped the deck a lot. It's doing a lot better in ladder right now. You're seeing it a lot even in Diamond Rank. I think Eldlich stun is in a pretty good place, probably above Heroes, probably in tier 3 still. It's still Eldlich, and it's definitely not as good as like Runic stun in my opinion. It does have some advantages over Runic, like the fact that it can close out games a lot quicker. Also, people are not running a lot of destruction back row removal because Runic can just protect their back row with the Hugin. People will be running maybe like a Cosmic Cyclone and just kind of aiming to get rid of it with like non-destruction removal cards. And because of that, Eldlich can kind of slip in through the cracks because people are not running the Harpy's Feather Duster or the Lightning Storm nearly as much right now. So it does kind of give Eldlich this weird advantage of just kind of being like a Eldlich jump scare. I still don't think, again, I don't think it's like tier 2 or anything like that, but stun is definitely seeing some prevalence in the meta again, and this deck is doing pretty good. I think it's a lot better than Ishizu combo zombie or whatever. I think if you want to play zombie, you're better off playing like the toxic, like just floodgate Eldlich stuff with a little zombie engine in there to get a Ballardrock on the field and just kind of lock the game down. All right, and next up, let's just talk about a pretty shitty one here. Numeron's the best bad deck. It's not good. Again, I don't think a dedicated going second strategy right now is really the play in Master Duel. People are setting up crazy interruptions or crazy floodgates. Numeron is literally just draw the out dot deck. It's not great. It's just not very good. Next up here, let's do another like kind of going second but can be played going first deck. I think Sky Strikers are not great right now. They're not like free wins, but I don't think they're even tier 3. I honestly think they're like maybe top of Rogue. Like Sky Strikers is good. It's a good deck. It can definitely get you to Diamond 1 for sure. It's probably the best out of the Rogue category right now. But it's still like it can be underwhelming. I'm not gonna lie, it can definitely be underwhelming. Sometimes you get insane control over the game, but it's very hand dependent for Sky Strikers, and they're pretty weak to interruptions, especially if you can't get to set up your engage properly. You kind of just like lose your gas really quickly and run out of steam. So I don't know. I don't think this deck is really that impressive right now, even though it can absolutely take games from any deck in the game, depending on your hand. I don't know. I just don't think it's that good. Next up, an almost top tier. That's always almost top tier. Let's do Dragon Link. I think it's hard for me to save Dragon Link. Dragon Link is probably better than Exosisters. Yeah. Okay, Dragon Link. I mean, Dragon Link is almost always like an almost top tier. That little period where people were playing Alba in the extra deck was kind of rough, but even then you could just set up an IP Masquerena and get rid of the face down Albaz, right? Overall, I mean, this deck, what else is there to say? It's always a good combo deck, sets up really good boards, can play through a lot of interruptions, can play after Nibiru, can keep doing plays through different hand traps. Maxi does kind of win the game against Dragon Link, let's be real. Like Mathmech is a deck that if you go Maxi, they can just kind of just set up the most minimal stuff just to get their super factorial to go off, and they could just win the game off of that. Dragon Link can't really win the game after you use Maxi if it resolves, to be honest, at least if they're going first. Now let's talk about a fan favorite for me. I'm a huge fan of Scareclaw. Scareclaw is still Scareclaw, however, and it just doesn't really do very much. It can win games. It's got great OTK potential going second, can play through interruptions depending on what the interruptions are. So it's definitely not like a bad deck or anything, but it's not like, it's not up there, you know. I don't even think it's as good as Sky Strikers. Going first with the Adventure Engine, it can set up a pretty decent board, you know, set up a couple of negates. It's definitely not like a bad deck or anything. Okay, best case scenario, you can set up like a Baron de Fleur with an Adventure negate, with like an IP Masquerena, and you know, or a Tryhard. Like, you got a lot of things you can do with this deck. Like, it's really solid. It's just like there's a lot of more solid decks in the format, so you know, I'm gonna leave it in Rogue, but I think it's really good and I love it. I love this deck so much. Let's talk about Labyrinth. Labyrinth, I think, is tier 3. I think it's above definitely like Floowandereeze. I think Labyrinth is just a really good trap deck. It loses pretty hard to back row removal, but it's in a similar place to Eldlich, where it's like a lot of people don't even like running like hard destruction back row removal just because it doesn't do anything to Runic stun, which is definitely the most popular back row deck in the game. So you can kind of steal wins with this deck. I also think people should be playing Dimension Shifter a lot more in Labyrinth, even though it does lose you some of the things you want to be able to do with the deck. What your opponent loses when you go Dimension Shifter versus what you lose is such a huge discrepancy. Like, you can still win the game under Dimension Shifter playing Labyrinth. So I definitely think people, if they ran that more, you might actually see this deck go up, because they would just get free wins off of activating Dimensional Shifter and like setting 4 and passing, to be honest. Like what is your opponent going to do? Unless they're like playing Floowandereeze, I guess. On to the next deck here, we're going to do Sword Soul. Sword Soul, I think, is still like, again, an almost top tier. Like, that's what I'm saying. This is a very diverse format. There's a lot of really good decks. That's why I thought this format was so hard to pin down. And I think Duelist Cup is going to be really interesting because of it, because there's going to be so many good decks that people can play. Sword Soul is, again, just an amazing deck. I think it's like just over Dragon Link. Of course, Dragon Link can be like a bit more impressive in terms of its combos, but oftentimes dragons will just take forever to set up literally the same amount of negates as a basic Sword Soul combo. So I'm gonna put Sword Soul over because you save a lot of time on the timer, which gives you more time to think, and they do have like really good ways to play through interruptions. They also have a better time going second technically, just because they can bait out a lot of negates using those Tenyi cards. You know, you can't really go wrong with Sword Soul. It's ever since it came out, it's just been a deck that you can really, it's just a good old reliable to get to Diamond 1. So yeah, if you guys want to play this in the Duelist Cup, I think you'll probably do decent. Oh, and it can run like a million hand traps, which is nice, I guess. Next up, let's do a goofy, funny UE one. Let's do Crystal Beasts. I think Crystal Beasts are in a pretty good place. I would put them like Rogue, probably under Striker. You know, they can play under Dimensional Shifter, so they get free wins off of Shifter. Also, like, Crystal Conclave control is just cool. I don't know very much about the advanced Crystal Beast combos and stuff like that. I don't really think that's the best way to play it, though. I think Crystal Conclave control is a lot better, and it's just, I don't know, it's kind of solid. You can play with Kaijus, kind of control your opponent's board, then bounce everything back, and just kind of play that way, kind of like a similar way to Luna Kaiju. So it's a pretty interesting deck. It's also like a very easy to play and fun deck, so I think it's a good option if you want to like ride in Diamond, but it might be kind of tough to get to Diamond 1 with this deck. I did get a 5-game win streak in Diamond with it, though. Like, it's definitely, you can't sleep on this deck. It's not bad. It looks worse than it is, but yeah, it's definitely going to be, any deck in here is going to be really a challenge to get to Diamond 1 with, for sure. Next up, let's do Dynamorphia. Dynamorphia is still really good. I think like Dynamorphia probably goes probably like right under Eldlich, I would say. Like, you know, Dynamorphia, Rexterm is crazy. Rexterm is insane. Rexterm wins games. Going second, though, Dynamorphia is not the best, and their life point stuff makes them like very risky to play, especially if your stuff gets negated, and then, you know, you already had to pay the life points for cost, so you're like one swing away from losing the game. So going second, they're really, really bad, and also like field wipes do a lot to them. So I don't know, they're kind of iffy, especially with the Runic cards being around. Runic does a lot to this deck, so I feel like I can't really put them much higher, but they are still really solid, and you can definitely get to Diamond 1 with it. It's just a little bit of an uphill climb, you know? All right, and now let's do Salamangreat, and they feel more like Salaman mid to me right now. I would put them at the bottom of tier 3. I do think they're a little better than Rogue, just because they have access to the Mathmech cards and stuff like that. Salamangreat just kind of mid, man. What they do is just mid. When they go full combo, it's a mid-ass combo, plus like if you activate Max C, they're gonna pass on like fucking like 2 interruptions, and they summon like 30 times, and you get like a shit ton of draws for nothing. So I don't know, I just don't think it's like that. Actually, you know what? I changed my mind. It's top of Rogue. It's not even in here, to be honest. Yeah, it's just top of Rogue. And next up, and finally, we're gonna do Orcust. I've never put Orcust on a tier list before, but yeah, with this recent unlimits on the ban list, I actually think this deck has now become a very significant threat. I definitely think it's like probably in tier 3, probably put them above Floowandereeze. What I've been seeing them do is really, really solid. Of course, they can play through a lot of interruptions. That field spell is completely broken, and if you destroy it, they get to get it back. And being able to activate their effects in the grave on your turn is just so scary. It's really hard to stop, because if you try to call by a card, they're just going to respond with that card. So they're going to banish it out of their grave. So you don't even get to call by like their Symbol Skeleton or their Orcust Nightmare to stop their plays. So even though you'd think call by would be crazy against this deck, call by doesn't do that much. There's not that many good ways to out it going second. However, it is a deck that if it goes second, it also doesn't do very much at all, especially against like more combo focused decks like Sprite and Adamancipators. So I still think it's a really good place. I think genuinely it's better than Floowandereeze. Undoubtedly, it's at least better than Floowandereeze at going second. I'll give it that much. And going first, I mean, it's a lot harder to interrupt than Floowandereeze for sure. So I think it's a solid deck overall. That crescendo is just disgusting that they can always set it up so consistently on top of more interruptions, and bringing back that Dingirsu from the grave, sending your stuff to the grave, makes it really good against Runic as well. So yeah, I think Orcust is a real threat right now, a very real threat in the current format. But that's pretty much my tier list, guys. Let me know what you think. I think it looks decent, but honestly, I'm not gonna lie, guys, it's been really hard to pinpoint the tier list for this format, because like I said, there's almost too many good decks right now that it's really hard to figure out which is better than which and by which metric, you know. I think it's gonna be an interesting Duelist Cup, at least. Even though there's gonna be probably a lot of stun in the Duelist Cup, there's also gonna be a lot of variety. You can expect some Exosisters, some Punk, some Dragon Link, some Sword Soul, Mathmech, Rika, a lot of Sprite, a lot of Runic Sprite, a lot of Life Twin Sprite, Frog Sprite, Adamancipator Sprite. It's going to be such a diverse Duelist Cup when you think about it, really. But yeah, anyway, all shits and giggles aside, guys, this is my tier list. Thank you for watching the video. Let me know your thoughts in the comments. Let me know if you think I'm tripping. I'm sure there's some questionable spots on here, because honestly, this list was really hard to make, like I said. So I'd really like to know what you guys think about it. Make sure to like, comment, and subscribe. We're trying to get to 20,000 subscribers by the end of the summer. I don't know if that's crazy anymore. Like, I don't even know what's crazy anymore, because we hit 11,000 like just yesterday. Thank you guys for 11,000, by the way. And yeah, so I just don't know what to expect anymore. You guys are amazing. Anyway, that's gonna be it for me. Huge shout out to my UCT tier members. That would be JQ the King, Hit or Miss JT, B-Dubs, Who the Man Me, Bongerman for 20, and that dude Joey. You guys are awesome. Thanks again also to everyone else supporting in the Miss tier and the Baby tier over on Twitch, and you who's liking, commenting, and doing all that good stuff. Okay, that's it for me. Peace.